welcome back to Soul Mechanics. This is a special episode for a special someone. I am not going to give a shout out to their name as they do not want for me to, but they'll know who they are. I'm going to send this video to them. So hello, it's nice to be contacting you. This is, please keep an open mind here and just consider the things that I present. I've had to do this over and over again, and at the moment I am not only lacking space on my phone, but I am very seriously late and in a seriously dangerous predicament at the moment, while at the same time I am in fact in a very particular sort of state of being, you could say. I'd like to apologize if I have difficulty speaking at any point. I am right now currently at the end of my monthly experiment that many of you who have been watching the channel will know exactly what I'm talking about. This one's been particularly effective in many ways. However, as I said, I am now at the end of it, which is to say I have not eaten or drank water or slept or anything in a very long time. So please bear with me. I need to do this as quickly as is possible. If I am unable to cover all of it in the allotted time, that is to say the space on my phone, it might cut me off. In any case, in what case, I apologize in advance if that happens. We will continue. This is going to have to be a few parts, as there's a hell of a lot to cover here, but I'm going to try and get the basics down, the foundation right here. So, what we're talking about here is the state of being, most often referred to as nirvana or enlightenment. It comes from Hinduism initially, and Buddhism, as an offshoot of that. Buddhism was kind of an offshoot of Hinduism for the most part, that had slightly differing understanding, and just essentially Buddhism kind of presented itself as just kind of sort of having a lack of respect for the concept of God in and of itself, which that's basically going to be the major factor that differentiates them. So obviously I'm not going to be agreeing with that. However, Buddhism is likely going to be the closest belief structure that is sort of pseudo-belief structure that, comes closest to the one that I personally have at face value. There are deeper aspects to my beliefs that, as I've said before in the original initiative video, where I spoke on beliefs, and I did state that I will likely not share my belief structure with anybody because it's fucking crazy, and I'm absolutely certain most people will just simply not be equipped to manage it. It could very easily result in people actually dying were they to accept it and see the truth in it and understand it the way that I do. It would very likely lead to people attempting to escape life, which there's only one way out of that. Anyways, the state in Hinduism is most often referred to as samdhi, which is something, I love that word. I've always loved that word, and I've been fascinated with this state of being because, in fact, I had experienced it for quite some time while I was still married, honestly, and it in fact did present one of the first. There are, in this particular understanding and the experience of this and the investment in this as an experiential presentation, kind of defining yourself as being this and placing yourself in this scenario, there are various fundamental and exceptionally blatant and obvious fatal flaws in the very concept of this as being, a frame of reference that is considerable as a way of life for the most part. It has very succinct and entirely fatal flaws in its very programming, you could say, the very structure of it. But it is fun. It's a good way to be for a while, and it allows the ability to access this state of being and make use of it allows for one to essentially kind of eliminate certain problematic issues in life, that, bothersome or painful values in play, broken values. It allows for one kind of to avoid them for all intents and purposes. But as any of you that's actually involved with the initiative, or most specifically the Remnants program, will know, that we are not actually wanting to avoid these things. We don't want to escape, because this is like important. So anyways, Earlier in the crossing the line video, the invitation, the third one, I think it's a sealed clip that's only available for the Remnants program, so you'll have to go through there to get it if you want to see it. It spoke at length on the concept that we've developed, or the foundation of our curriculum, which is the color-coded personality profiling system, which is exceptionally vague and simple at its base. It's just blues are intellectually oriented people, psychic people. Greens are mechanically or biologically oriented people. Reds are emotionally, or they're people persons, and obviously that's very vague, very broad stroke conception of profiling the personality. It gets more convoluted and isolate after that using other structures, but that is the basic idea behind it. And I spoke at length to most specifically the stages of development for blues that we see happening almost every time. It seems to be unavoidable. The color coding is based on the interests, by the way. It's going to be based heavily on what one is intimately invested in. What somebody holds in highest regard as their personal interest is going to define what color they are. So, as I said, I spoke of the stages of development for spotters in general, really, but primarily for blues. And the friend that we're making this video for, he is a very particular sort of blue that we'll have to talk about at a later point in the color coding course. But he's what we might call a kind of exaggerated blue. He has a tendency to be exaggerated or exacerbate his investment in whatever he happens to be investing in. This guy, it's very lovable, man. It's certainly not a negative quality to have, but it does get you in trouble. And the worst part of it is that most often you do not really even see the trouble as it's happening, but it is happening. You are more often than not, putting yourself in somewhat precarious scenarios, and I'm going to try to make that clear here. Now, we spoke to a certain stage of development in the evolution of a blue on a personal level, wherein they will begin to engage the boundary, and they will begin to explore the psyche, the depths of the psyche, and they will, for all intents and purposes, effectively begin to get lost there. They'll get addicted to it, they'll get lost in it, they'll develop what we call a feedback loop, or an eternal recurrence factor, wherein they keep trying to get somewhere in there that is not really available. Like they always, and I'm speaking from my experience. I've been through this thoroughly. I've been deeper into this than most people will even dare to try going. So I know what the fuck I'm talking about precisely. I've fucking investigated this firsthand, hardcore, for a long time. Now, they're going to keep trying. It's going to always seem as though they're getting somewhere, they're accomplishing something new is coming their way, but it's not. It's a trick. It never ever is. It's just a reflection of you. It's always going to continue doing that. That's how eternity is presented. It's just an illusion that reflects you and continues as indefinitely. Now, we believe there may be a way to get beyond that, but that's not what this video is about. It's about blues tend to get trapped in there. They get stuck in it, and what they're going to experience in most cases, what they're going to define as their experience, is going to be referring to this nirvana or samdhi, state of being, which, most of the people that I have pulled out of this, they've effectively, this is going to be right at the edge of actually moving into the higher stages of play in the game here. That's just like the more profound and effective stages of development in your personal evolution. Like up to that point, and most particularly in that scenario that we're speaking to, one has developed kind of in a sort of, I don't want to come across as though I'm being negative in any way. I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to be offensive by any stretch, but I do have to state the facts that the development, insofar as concerns one's personal evolution up to that point and throughout that state of being, is, for all intents and purposes, just it's immature. It's it's the adolescent stage, ultimately, in your personal evolution. You have not actually moved into a higher level yet, and you are going to be entirely incapable of perceiving it, let alone comprehending what it is. From your perspective, it doesn't even exist, and you're going to thoroughly believe that you have in fact found the answer for the most part. But what this is essentially is what I'd have to go ahead and call an enlightenment trap. Before I continue here, I should like to state that this person did comment something to me about my beliefs, or about changing his beliefs, or something to that effect. He said, my beliefs, something about my beliefs. I don't recall right now. I'm so fucking late. I'm trying to move as fast as I can. I'm sorry, I can't recall. But something about beliefs being just presenting as a value in play. Now, I really need to make it very clear that nothing we are doing is in any way about any beliefs, ever. What we are doing, for the most part here, what we are doing is we're trying to point out the hidden truths, firstly, I should like to note that if you are experiencing this samdi situation, and that's what you're investing in at the moment, and you believe that you've somehow surpassed belief structures in totality, the fact of the matter is that you are playing into very specific hidden beliefs that are hidden in plain sight, and you are a spotter, man. You really should see these things. It's quite surprising that you have moved on this without seeing that, but we're going to help you find it. You've got a spotter's eyes. I helped train you for a little while. You helped train me too, but I mean, I did teach you what I could at the time. It wasn't I wasn't at any higher stages then. I wasn't even this far, but I did teach you how to spot values. You should see this. Now, what happens in scenarios like this, wherein such a state of being, an enlightenment trap, as I call it, does in fact present these hidden beliefs, these hidden values. What happens is these values will slip into your system unnoticed. You won't know that you've assimilated these values, because they're presented in a very tricky way that kind of slips in unnoticed, as I said, like a ninja. And we have gone ahead and decidedly determined to call these ghost values for the most part, because effectively what they are doing is haunting your body, your person. Now, people have raised the concept later, many spotters in fact are beginning to raise the concept of NPCs in play, which is to say people on the planet in this day and age, people in life that do not actually have an intelligent awareness. For the most part, they're suggesting that there are people out there who do not have an identity, that are just NPCs, non-player characters. Now, I need to go ahead and explain here for any of them that might see this, and I'll go ahead and send it to them, that that is in fact not a conceivable possibility by any stretch. There is no way to even predict that as a functional happening. This is because one of the biggest misinterpretations people do tend to make in this field, the metaphysical field. Again, we are in the metaphysical investigation field. We look for the truth, the actual absolute situation. That is what spotters like us are trying to determine, an absolute situation. So we determine what is actually fundamentally real, what is actually really happening, without the clutter that surrounds it, without the aspects attached to the values of it. We try to see through to the actual happening reality and present that as it is, because it is in fact a hell of a lot more fascinating than any of the fantasies that people play into. But so there's no beliefs in play here. We do not make use of beliefs. I only have one belief, and it's not even in anything that matters. I just believe that the term God is to be held in high regards and is respectable and can be made use of. That the broken ass term of God can actually be repaired if we get together on it. I respect it. I'm keeping it. I like to use it, but it's not at the moment as it stands for most people. It's not actually definitive of what it is intending to represent at all. So that's a difficulty we'll speak to later. But these ghost values that slip through unnoticed, they're going to effectively immediately go to work corrupting your system, which is to say they're going to start altering values in very very slight variations to certain values. They're going to start altering them very, very, very slightly, unnoticeably, but in ways that are going to cause, ultimately, as they resound with each other and your value system, also they'll go ahead and they'll break values that are unalterable. That's a big deal. And obviously this is speaking to your person as being like a computer system and determining how pieces, parts play and shit. Yes, that's what we are doing, and we can do this because we have in fact gone ahead and determined that we've solved that mystery. We know how it works. So yes, that's exactly what we're doing. This is not some far-fetched fantasy. This is a rock-hard truth. We understand this entirely. These ghost values are going to corrupt other values. They're going to break values that they can't corrupt, and that is to say they're going to slightly alter your value system, but it's going to result in you haphazardly giving into whatever consideration is promoted by these values, and B, dramatically altering your outlook in ways that really you have no control over, and that's where these NPCs are going to come into play. However, it's suggested that the NPCs, as I said, do not have an identity. Again, this is not a determinable possibility because it's not even plausible, and the reason for this is being the very common misinterpretation most people in this field make is the idea that you are inhabiting a body, like this body is a vehicle for your soul or whatever, your spirit. That is not the case at all, and this is so simple. It's just people in the earlier traditions, they knew what they were talking about. They had a pretty firm grasp on it, and they had a lot of good information to share that moved us along and helped us figure out how to just be, essentially how to exist properly for the most part, and how to even go about investigating these mysteries. But there were certain things that they did not know, that they were unaware of, things that they had missed somehow. I have no idea how, because it's very fucking point blank obvious. But